Hi everybody, my name is Sylvie Brieu. I'm an international reporter, an author, and an educator. I'm also a cultural diversity consultant. My talk today will address the following issue. How can digital media help preserve multiculturalism and multilingualism? I will try to answer that question based on my extensive field experience with some of the most marginalized communities worldwide, which creatively combine their ancient wisdom and original high-tech strategies to survive. But first, as an introduction, I would like to share some personal background information with you. I was born in the south of France, near the Spanish border, and was exposed to different ways of thinking and different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, at a very young age. I was raised in a family that was closely connected to the land and spoke Occitan, which is a severely endangered Romance language. They named me Sylvie, which means forest in Latin. Later on, at the University of Paris-Sorbonne and UC Berkeley, I earned degrees in modern languages, in international relations, and in journalism. And I also developed a strong passion for Maya hieroglyphics writing. I began my career in 1992 as a socially engaged documentary filmmaker and a TV reporter in California. And one of my first documentaries was a short piece about Tibetan in exile in the San Francisco Bay Area and the challenges they faced to preserve their spiritual heritage in a materialistic American society. A few years later, in the mid-1990s, I was elected to chair an international network of young journalists. I led two groups of professionals from 5 continents to Central and South America on a summer university tour that emphasized freedom of expressions and human rights. As head of the network, I also moderated a seminar in Thailand on cultural and religious pluralism, which was attended by more than 200 participants from 86 countries. In 1999, I was one of the founding members of National Geographic France, which is the French edition of the magazine National Geographic Society. And I held the position of senior editor until 2013. And during that period of time, I created a section in the magazine that profiled artists and writers from different backgrounds and exposed their visions of the world. So over more than a decade, my assignments led me to spend time with some resilient First Nations, the Kalash people of Pakistan, the Zulu people of South Africa, the Maori people of New Zealand, the Waina people of French Guiana, the Zapotec people of Mexico, the Lakota Sioux people of South Dakota, the Haida people of Haida Gwaii, etc. And each time I was struck by their strong determination, their capacity to innovate despite serious challenges such as the devastating effects of colonization, plundering, assimilation attempts through boarding schools, discrimination, and I was also struck by their strong sense of humor. And what really moved me, I was really sensitive to their willingness to share this message. Please tell your readers we are not fossilized natives. We are still around, our culture is still vibrant. So in 2009, I was invited to join the All Roads Film Project as an advisory board member. So that was a leading program of National Geographic Society in DC, and it celebrated world diversity. It was decided to call it All Roads to pay tribute to all roads of mankind. And at a time when people were fearing that we were leading towards a monochromatic world since a language was dying every 2 weeks. So All Roads provided a platform for indigenous and minority cultural storytellers to showcase their work to promote knowledge, dialogue, and understanding with a broader global audience. Each year, a festival was held in Washington, D.C., and brings together artists from different backgrounds. And several grants were also given to help people achieve make their films. Films such as Real Engine by Cree filmmaker Neil Diamond was screened during one of the festivals, and this road movie explored the portrayal of North American natives through a century of cinema and how the myth of the Indian has influenced the world's understanding and misunderstanding of natives. There was a film also Shooting with Mercy that was screened during that time, and it tells the story of the Mercy people, who are a pastoralist nomad tribe of Ethiopia. So it tells the story through the eyes of one of their members, which carries a Kalashnikov in one hand and a camera in the other. He portrays the lifestyle of the Mercy people under major threats to give them a voice. So All Roads really wanted people to see the planet through different cultural lenses. Unfortunately, that program ended in 2013 due to a lack of funding. Since 2013, I have participated in the launch of two European programs, the Université Populaire du Voyage, which could be translated as Popular University of Travel, and the Villa Marco Polo. And these programs are dedicated to educating adults and youngsters about cultural diversity issues in order to craft a framework of living together without prejudice. So as an explorer, an international reporter, and an independent filmmaker, I've traveled all over the world to promote voices and visions of the world that are underrepresented in the international media landscape in order to fight against cliché and to foster intercultural dialogue. My ultimate double goal is to promote the richness of diversity and to build bridges and alliances between community, in other words, to promote unity in diversity. So I would like to develop more to give you some more insights on my current project. I started the project When Our Voices Rise. In French, it's called Quand s'élèvent nos voix. So When Our Voices Rise, I started it in 2008 under the French Commission for UNESCO. It was given the patronage of the French National Commission for UNESCO. And it focused on indigenous change makers and risk takers whose courage and initiative make a positive impact in their community. So I highlight the creative solutions they find to face contemporary issues. So basically, the idea is to break stereotypes and to make people understand that they are not just victims of colonization, plundering, and discrimination, but that they can also be great sources of inspiration for everybody. Because they are rich of their language, they are rich of their knowledge, they are rich of their craft. They just claim respect for their culture, respect for their land. As one of the Sarayaku leader from Ecuador told me once, his name is Jose Galingua, he said, "We are not anti-development people as some people try to say we are. We just want our rights to be respected and the laws to be implemented." So I'm convinced we have a lot to learn from some of the most discriminated communities in the world, but how do they make their voices heard? How can high tech help them reconnect with their roots, preserve and value their heritage, and transmit it to the next generations? So the project, When Our Voices Rise, I started it in South America, and a book, a documentary, and a series of articles were published. And my goal is to pursue this project in all the continents. So regarding South America, I noticed that despite centuries of hardship, indigenous voices have been increasingly rising on the international arena over the past few years. They played a significant role in some of the in the elections of, for instance, Ollanta Humala in Peru and Evo Morales in Bolivia, as well as contributing to the worldwide mobilization against global warming. So during an intense journey, a year-long intense journey from the Andes to the Amazon via Easter Island, I traveled solo on the trails of South America, and foregoing a rigid itinerary, I set my sights on seeking out some of the most creative native communities linked to great civilizations such as the Quechua people, the Rapanui people, the Mapuche people, the Savanchi people, the Suri people, the Uruawa people, the Guarani people. And I asked myself the question, how did it continue? How do they combine high-tech strategy with traditional knowledge to preserve their identity? How can they do it? How is it possible? And how can they inspire us too? How do they make their revolution on social network, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram? Because most of them these days use HD camera to preserve their identity, their language, and to transmit also their cultural legacy to future generations, such as the Pater Suri people. They are one of the 225 indigenous groups of Brazil who they decided to partner with Google Earth in 2007. So I wanted to mention that example because the Pater people speak Tupi-Mande, and they are known as the Suri people. They live in the state of Rondônia, which is one of the most deforested western portion, which is in the western portion of the arc of deforestation. And since the first official contact that was established with Brazilians of European descent in 1969, some drastic changes occurred in their society. So due to war and diseases like the flu, smallpox, and TB, the population dropped from about 5,000 to 250. Today there are about 1,200. Most of the Pater people converted to Christianity, and they were forced to abandon their chants, their dances, and their traditional brewage, the chicha, which is made with fermented manioc. So when I met Chief Almir Narayamoga Suri in 2008 and stayed with his family in Cacoal and in his village, La Petania, he had just started a crusade to save his territory, concluding a partnership with Google Earth. So the Pater people hope their unusual alliance will reduce illegal rainforest destruction. Chief Almir's belonged to the Gamet clan, and he's the general coordinator of the association Metarelia that coordinates the management plan of indigenous territory 7 de setembro, 7th of September. So during the weeks I stayed with him and his family in the small border town of Cacoal and in his village of La Petania, I could record his testimony in a documentary and also in a book. And I would like to quote him because all my work is about voices, so I think it's good to hear some of the voices. Unfortunately, I can't screen a piece of documentary and include it in this talk, but at least you get the quote from Chief Almir, which is, I think, very important. So Chief Almir was saying that, as I always say, we have abandoned our bows and arrows a long time ago. They were our weapons to defend our lives. Today we use communication systems, technological systems as instruments of dialogue with the world, with the government, with the society, the countries, in order to think together and to unite strengths for the future of the world, for a better future for everybody. Today we have this partnership to be trained, to be able to use, and to offer the Google tool. Through Google, we spread our history, our projects. We also show parts of our culture. Communication is very important, and because it can make people aware of the importance of respecting their fellows and their place of living. So he was saying also, I have to do my part. Each person has his role to play in contributing to a better world. Each human being's duty is often defined as time passes by from day to day. Unquote. So during the Rio Plus 20 conference that took place in 2012 in Brazil, the Paitar people launched their cultural map on Google Earth. It was a new digital way to share their culture and their story with the world. So they mapped historical sites where they had battles with other tribes, but also locations of good hunting grounds for the wild pig, or sites where plants such as the acai trees were identified. And in order to achieve that mapping project, they had to learn, among other things, how to take photos, how to make videos, and how to collect stories from the elders and to tape them, and then to download them on the internet. And from there, they decided how to best manage their territory. This map also became the base for the Carbon Project. And as Chief Almir was saying, and I will quote him again, we, the Suri people, have been elaborating the first carbon project of the Brazilian Amazon. We've been discussing this carbon project within our reforestation program because we know it can generate an environmental service in order to eliminate carbon produced by the polluting countries and the populations that contaminate our planet. Our argument is as follows: how indigenous people could be compensated for the favor they are doing to humanity while they look after the forest and replant it, because Chief Almir and his people are also trying to replant part of their territory that has been deforested. So I quote him there. But Google gave them smartphones to monitor their biodiversity, their borders, and their forest in the context of climate change. So this pioneering carbon project is part of a 50-year sustainable development project on the Tupi-Mande territory, which includes several tribes, sharing the same language, such as Zoro, Gavian, Uruwawa, and Sintalargas, and they all participated in that program. They're all ancient enemies, but today they unite their strengths to manage their land. So, as I kept talking with Chief Almir, he was saying that he's hoping to build a multicultural Tupi-Mande university where scientific and technological knowledge and ancient wisdom could bridge to save the forest. So aside from that, the Paitar people launched a big plan of reforestation, as I first started mentioning earlier on, of their territory. So they have an acreage of 248,000 hectares, and 8% of their land has been deforested already. So what they do is that most of the time they plant trees that produce fruits for their diet and material for their rituals and their culture and their arts and crafts. And it enables them to maintain their culture alive and to maintain their harmonious relationship with the forest. So I would like to quote Chief Almir again, and he was saying that without the forest, our entire culture would disappear, and without our culture, the forest will have disappeared a long time ago. To me, that sums it up. So without the land, there's no culture, and the culture depends pretty much on the land. It nurtures itself from the land. So that struggle to save the Amazon by reforesting it upset the greedy farmers and foresters in the that lives nearby the reservation. And in the region where the Suri people live, 10 indigenous leaders have been murdered in the past 11 years. And Chief Almir himself has been threatened to death. And lately in March. Well, he wrote a spiritual will for his children, and his first book, Sauver la planète, Save the Planet, was published by my editor, Alba Michel, in March 2015. So I keep in contact with Chief Almir, and last time I saw him was in Paris at the launch of his book at the Salon du Livre. So Save the Planet, Sauver la planète. I would like to use another example. It's still in the Brazilian Amazon, but it's a very good example to me that illustrates how you can use filmmaking to promote cultural values and at the same time gender equality. So the example I'm going to use takes place in the Kawaiwete community in the Xingu Park in Brazil, and I was interested in mentioning that example because one of the people I met when I was during my long stay in Brazil reminded me one of the quote of a Chavanche elder who was saying that nobody respects those they don't know. We need to show the strength, the beauty, and the diversity of our culture. It's the only way to have our rights respected. So this elder's name was Vabuas Chavanche, and he understood that you had to share a little bit about the culture if you wanted people to respect you, if you wanted the culture to be visible. So the Chavanche people, I'm not going to elaborate much about their culture here because I haven't studied much, I spent time with them, but they're one of the J-speaking, but since the talk is about also multilingualism, I just think it's worthwhile mentioning that they're one of the J-speaking tribe of Brazil, and they say they come from the land where the sun is born and where the sky begins. And there are about 12,000 living in 180 aldeas, which are villages. So back to the Kawaiwete, a few years ago I published an article called Women's Digital Revolution in the Amazon. Women's Digital Revolution in the Amazon. So in the Xingu National Park, in the northeastern part of the state of Mato Grosso in Brazil, women from different tribes gather to use photos and cameras to preserve their endangered culture, language, and tradition. And digital media help them reconnect with their roots, but also it helps them value their roles within the community and establish links with women from different tribes. So how is that? I'm going to explain now. So the Kawaiwete are recognized to be an agricultural and a warrior people. They played an active role in the creation of the indigenous Xingu Park, and which demarcation was ratified in 1961. So in the remote village of Quaruja, Tuyat, the chief and shaman, and his wife, Vicio, invited me to participate in a workshop, in a multimedia workshop for women only. Usually they're only for men, but this one was only for women on purpose. And this workshop was taught by Marie Correa, who is a filmmaker based in Sao Paulo. And she's also the founder of the Instituto Gatito. So when I arrived by boat, Vicio had prepared a welcome traditional meal with boiled piranhas, freshly fished the same day, a bijou, it's like a manioc crepe, and a large bowl of mingao. She explained that manioc was the basis of their alimentation. And she explained also that the Kawaiwete cultivates several species of manioc. Each one has its own utility in their rich gastronomical culture. And they also have, she said, 42 different types of peanuts. So anyway, in their mythology, Kuperup, the woman shaman who taught agriculture to the Kawaiwete, Kuperup, the woman shaman who taught agriculture to the Kawaiwete. So their agriculture is also linked to their mythology. And it's known to be sophisticated and and they have a diversified culinary art. And this sophisticated agriculture and sophisticated culinary art are the foundation of Kawawede's identity. So they are also outstanding for art craft, which is characterized by complex graphic designs. But anyway, so this is the reason why Vicio, Tuyat's wife, and some women from the village of Kwaroja decided to film 12 traditional recipes during the workshop, such as canapé, which is a bread made out of peanut and manioc flour, and their goal being to strengthen their role as knowledgeable mothers within the community. So I talked to Marie Correa, the filmmaker who was training them, and asked her some questions about the willingness of these women to film their traditional recipes. So this is what she said. I'm going to quote her now. So she said, their idea is strategic. Preoccupied by pathologies such as diabetes and high blood pressure due to a change in diet influenced by the outside world, to value their gastronomy is a way for them to mobilize their community to come back to a healthier traditional diet. Using new technologies as tools of self-representation opens new possibilities of expression and promotes self-esteem. Unquote. So the Kawawete have fiercely resisted the invasion of their lands by rubber company since the end of the 19th century. And after the 1950s, the region of the Arinos, Peches, and Telespires rivers was divided up into 3 glebs, and the Kawawete were divided into 3 groups. So most moved to the indigenous national park of Xingu, where 16 tribes live together today. So women attending the multimedia workshop were from different generations and ethnic backgrounds. So they were Kawawete, they were Mashakali, they were Kraho. And this workshop gave them the opportunity to know each other and to practice the Moitara, which is a system of object exchange that they all appreciate, and that's pretty traditional too. And the workshop also offered them a platform to share their problems and to support each other in elaborating new strategies and in finding new solutions. And it helped them also build a network of women beyond their ethnic group. So this video and photo training was also part of a process to revitalize the culture. And that's what Marie Correa explained, and I think it's better to quote her on that because that was her idea behind the project. So that's what she said, quote, "It's important to help women value their traditional knowledge to counterbalance external practices that weaken them. I think it's also important to foster exchanges with other groups from Brazil and nations of the world," unquote. So that's a way for women of building bridges and alliances, not to feel isolated any longer. And this gathering recently led to the creation of an association called the Yamuriku-ma Association of Xingu Women. So women came together to have a greater voice. I mean, they're still coming together to have a greater voice and participation in decisions about important issues that affect their lives, such as the tourism projects in the villages, construction of hydroelectric plants, and other projects that impact the environment, the culture, and the health. They also addressed issues related to the interaction with the border towns, such as non-organic waste, prostitution, alcoholism, violence, and misuse of the image of women. And this gathering of women were filmed are filmed each time they gather. Someone from who has been trained by Instituto Katitu, film them to record the meetings and to record the voices and to share these meetings and voices with people who couldn't attend. So anyway, that was the example of the Kawaiwete people in Brazil, and I thought it was worthwhile mentioning it because not only they use filming to value the culture, to transmit the culture, but also to value their roles as women and to promote gender equality. So a third example and last example I would like to use is how media tools can be used to claim back one's cultural heritage and to unite the community. So I would like to use an example of a Rapa Nui filmmaker. So the Rapa Nui people are the indigenous people of Easter Island. And so as you know, Easter Island is a remote island of the Pacific, known worldwide for its moai, its giant statues, and it was annexed by Chile in 1889. So while I was in continental Chile, spending time with some Mapuche poets, I met Alberto Otus, president of the Council of Ancient Rapa Nui. And the elder invited me to his land, saying, you know, people think that there are just moais on Easter Island and that our people died with our ancient great civilization, but we're still here. So you need to come and check it out. So I went to Easter Island and I attended there the Tapati Rapa Nui, which is a yearly festival that became the cement of an identity challenged by tragic history. So during the Tapati, the Rapa Nui indigenous people celebrate 2 weeks of festivities with music, dances, and sport events. So the objective of this festival is really to transmit some elements of a complex ancestral culture nurtured for centuries by Polynesian and Latino American influences. Leonardo Paccarati, who is the founder of the local newspaper El Correo del Moai, and he's also the manager of a local TV station. He films this event every year, and the event takes place between the end of January and beginning of February. And Leonardo is also a filmmaker, and one of his most recent documentary is called Teku Ane o Te Tupuna, which means the spirit of our ancestors. And in this documentary, he featured a young girl and her grandfather who traced back the ancestral stolen objects containing the sacred power of their culture, the mana. So Leonardo explained to me, and I'm going to quote him on that. He said, explaining the reason why he made his film, he said, quote, "I'm not interested in the objects, but in their manas, in the energy they contain. So we believe that when the mana comes back, order and balance will be reestablished in the island." So that's an example I could elaborate more on, but time is flying, so I would like to dedicate the last part of my talk to the challenges about bridging the gaps, about challenges I'm personally facing promoting cultural diversity and bridging the gaps between community. So over the past 2 years, I have been recording the voices of indigenous women changemakers from Burma, women who work together beyond ethnic and religious divides and who play a major role in building a peaceful country. Burma is one of the most culturally diverse countries in Asia. The ethnic majority is Burma, but there are 8 major groups: the Kachin, the Karen, the Kaya, the Shan, the Hmong, the Chin, and the Rakhine. and there are more than 135 subgroups according to the government. A figure that's not approved by all, and that does not include the persecuted Muslim minority of the Rohingya people. So since the opening up of the country in 2011, after decades of dictatorship, the use of hate speech preyed in the internet and fueled intercommunal tensions. To balance the violence and the hate speech, an online campaign was launched to promote tolerance and respect for diversity. But raising one's voice for peace is a challenge in pre-electoral Burma. Peace activists are targeted by extremists. So despite the threats, more and more civil society groups try to bridge the gaps between communities fighting against mistrust and discrimination. And they aim at valuing diversity and building unity, adopting a low-profile attitude due to an uncertain political context. They also have to struggle to make their initiatives happen despite a lack of subsidies. So for ethical purpose, I decided to finance my 3 trips to Burma, and it helped me build trust and confidence with the grassroots communities there. Activists from different ethnic backgrounds generously opened up their networks, and I would go with them on journeys, and without knowing most of the time where I was going, they would just say, trust us. And in a country where trust is still to build, they wouldn't elaborate much. So I didn't ask much question, and I just trusted them. And I had access to their reality and beyond all expectations. So I'm very grateful for their trust and confidence, and they knew that I had decided to travel to their country under no international umbrella, no international subsidies, and that I was financing my trips for ethical purpose. So since the borders opened, loads of foreigners poured in Burma, motivated mostly by economic interest. So I was only driven by a genuine interest to make their inspirational voices heard. And I knew no media would send their reporters for months in Burma to experience ordinary people, life, and expectations. So I also knew that people distrusted the international community, most of them, even though its support is needed. It sometimes jeopardized unintentionally local NGOs' long-term efforts in a complex context. So at my level, one of the permanent challenges is to find new international platforms for these voices at a time when in the main media there's a decreasing lack of interest to promote the beauty of cultural diversity and inspirational initiatives. But I believe that there are always ways to create platforms. So in order to have more impact, my goal is to team up, to partner with people working in different fields: social, academic, artistic, journalistic. And I do believe that conjugating our experiences, competences, and action will help make a difference. So my lifetime project, When Our Voices Rise, is not meant to be ego-centered. It is motivated by a strong conviction that despite our differences, we're all related, we're all parents, we're all part of the same family. And